Hello everyone, welcome to the second lesson in the Writing Armenian video series. Today we're going to talk about vowels and consonants. Vowels in Armenian are known as tsaynavor. So you would say that this letter is a vowel. As dara tsaynavor. Tsaynavor also has a second meaning of being rowdy or loud. So rowdy or loud, right? If someone's loud, so you can say as marte shatsayna. This man is really loud if they're, yelling or speaking very loudly. Okay, that is a side note. We're here to discuss vowels, but I just wanted to let you know of its second meaning. So, what are the vowels? Looking at this line, we have 8 vowels I've listed here, possibly 9 in my opinion, but 8 according to the textbook that I'm now following. So let us go over the pronunciation and some of the capital letters for these letters. So the 8 vowels. We have Ip, capital letter is A, written that way, pronounced as A. We have yetch, written as this, the capital letter. You just add that little hook, pronounced as ye or e. We have e, written like that with the hook, pronounced always as e. We have ut, written as that, pronounced as We have ini, capital E, and phonetic is pronounced as E. Vo, capital. It's just a bigger, you write the capital as a bigger vo and you add the little hook. It goes on top of a line, so it doesn't go below the line. I will make a previous video on how the letters are written on a line. I think that will be valuable, but let's move on here. This is pronounced as vo or o, depending on the situation. Capital for o is simply a big circle, o, pronounced as o. And we have, lastly, u. Right, u is composed of 2 letters. As you probably see, we have the vo, right here, same vo, and then we have a hyun. So we have 2 letters composing the u sound. Okay, so this is the capital. You just capitalize the vo if you were to do that. We don't see that often, but it can happen. And it's pronounced as u. I suppose I could write it this way, or maybe the umlaut. I think that's also pronounced as u, but maybe by analogy would be the best way to show how to pronounce this. So u as in Putin. So u, the same way that we were pronouncing this, Putin. It's not Putin, it's Putin. So it's u. That is the sound. Okay. U. Now, the u, this is the hyun, right? Okay, right. This letter right here is the hyun. This is an interesting letter because it has some properties. When hyun is added to the vo, it converts the sound from a vo to a hyun, to a u, right? It makes it an u, right? But if the hyun comes before the vo, as in the word for poem, vodanavor, for example, we see the hyun. I just wrote a hyun, and then the vo comes after, right? This ending sometimes happens in some words. And when the hyun is before the vo, it gives the hyun a v sound, right? Vodanavor, vor. Okay. For this reason, this hyun sometimes is referred to as the bazdig v, the small v translation, because recall we have another letter in the alphabet, the vev, which is specifically the letter that is pronounced as v. Okay? So because this is a bigger letter, just size-wise, this is sometimes referred to as the metzva, and then the hyun is referred to as the bazdigva. That is just something to note. But the main point here, everyone, is that when the hyun is added to a vo, it makes it an u, and it makes it be pronounced as u. And if the hyun comes before a vo, as in here, then it gives it a v sound, Okay? Now, let's see. Now we have to go over, for example, guys, I mentioned that for yetch, we have some options, 2 options of how it's pronounced. For vo, we have 2 options. How do we know? Well, I'll tell you. Okay, let's look at these examples. For example, the word for river is ked. We see a yetch in the middle of this word, in between 2 letters. Okay, ked. Phonetically, this is pronounced as ked. Another word is ser. This is the word for love. E is in the middle. Okay, this is phonetically spelled as ser. Now, ked and ser, they're both spelled. They're spelled with a yetch and a, but they are both pronounced with a e. I cannot distinguish based on the pronunciation of either of these words what the spelling is, ked or ser. They sound the same. How do I know if one is yetch or e? If one is spelled with yetch or e? That, my friends, is something that just has to be known just by repetition. It's very unfortunate. There is no way to distinguish. This is the challenge of spelling. So we cannot distinguish. However, let us compare this with the word for face, which is yeres. And then there's the word esh, which is the word for donkey. So in the word for face, yeres, we have a yetch in the beginning of a word, in the initial position. We also have one in the middle position, in between some letters. So phonetically, this is spelled ye, res. Also, this is the syllable. I just split this word into syllables, just so you know. So the yetch, when in the initial position, is pronounced as a ye, okay? And then we see this yetch is in the middle position, so it is pronounced as a e, right? As an similar to ked. Okay. And then now we look at esh. Is in the initial position. According to my schematic here, is always pronounced as okay? So we know if I have the sound at the beginning of a word, as in esh or etch miadzin, that must be an because if there is a yetch in the initial position, as in this word yeres, or in any other word, you will have a yes sound. Okay, so the bottom line, guys, when yetch is in the initial position, it is pronounced as ye. Middle position, pronounced as and the wherever it may be, it is pronounced as okay? So now we just sorted out this little confusion here, okay? I hope that was clear. If not, give a comment. Drop a comment. Now let's sort out this problem here, okay? How do I know if the vo is pronounced as vo or o? Very similar to the yetch problem. How to pronounce yetch? Very similar. Same thing. Okay. So if the vo is in the middle of a word, as in the word for famine, which is sov, okay, or in the word for near, which is mod, we see the o in the middle there. Both of these situations, sov as in Soviet, sov, and mod, I'm not adding an e here because then we may be tempted to pronounce it as mode, but it's mod, okay? Based on the pronunciation of these words, I cannot distinguish, I cannot differentiate the spelling. I can't know that sov is spelled with a vo, whereas mod is spelled with an o. Well, we can actually, because we have a rule here, which I was going to go into after, but I see how it applies here. If you have the o sound before a v, before a vev, then it's typically a vo. That's like a rule we can follow. So in this case, sov, because we have a vo before the meds v, before the vev, it is a vo. Okay, that's how you would distinguish. You can't distinguish it based on the pronunciation, but based on this rule right here, we can. Okay, but similar to in other situations, maybe we won't have the vo before the metzvah, and we'd run into a similar situation as in ked and sed, where if the vo is in the middle of a word, you cannot distinguish it based on pronunciation alone. That is something you just have to know through repetition, and that is the trouble of spelling. Okay, but fortunately, similar again to the yetch and the when vo is in the initial position, but if o is in the initial position, ot, which is the word for weather or air, okay, ot, o is always pronounced as o. It doesn't matter where it is, middle or the front in the initial position, it's pronounced as o. So this is ot phonetically. Now the word for thunder in Armenian is vorodum. Okay, we have a vo in the initial position. Okay, because it's in the initial position, it is going to be pronounced as vo. Instead, it's going to be pronounced as vo instead of o. Okay, so this, if I break it down to syllables, it'd be vo, ro, and notice we have another vo here. It is in the middle of a word. in between some letters. That's why the pronunciation is ro. It's not it's not revo, right? We said the first syllable is based strictly on the letter vo, and it is phonetically pronounced as vo, right? The next syllable based on this is ro. It's not revo, right? The reason, because vo is in between some letters. It's between these two letters, right? When vo is in between letters, as we saw in sov, okay, we're seeing it here again. When it's in between letters, it's pronounced as o. So the syllable here is ro. So it's vo, ro. Last syllable is dum. And we see this is the vo is before the hyun. So we know from here that is pronounced as u. So it's vo, ro, dum. Vorodum. Okay? So similar schematic. Vo. Okay? In the initial position, pronounced as vo. In the middle, pronounced as o. And before the hyun, forms u, pronounced as u, as in Putin, as in Putin. Okay, u. Okay, so these are our keys. Okay, o is always pronounced as o. It doesn't matter where it is, wherever it is. Okay, the exception, as I mentioned, if you have a vo before a v, a metzv, if you have a o sound before a metzv, as in sov, or there are a lot of words that end in ov, like garodov, gam, or badurov, or this ending. Actually, if it's tagged onto some words, it gives it a new meaning. It means that, like, with this object, that's the meaning that it assigns. That's another video of its own. But the lesson here, guys, is that if you have an o sound before a metzv, before a vev, before this letter, then it is spelled with a vo. I hope that's clear. Right, so we saw this in this word, sov. Okay, so o before v is always spelled with a vo. Okay. All right, so those are the vowels we covered. We covered their pronunciation. We covered some of their variations based on the position of the vowel. Okay, and we also reviewed the u briefly, and how if the hyun comes before the vo, it gives it a v sound. And we went through some of these examples here to clarify the variations of the pronunciation of the vowels. Okay, so now we know our vowels, and a consonant, the word for consonant in Armenian is paratsain. Paratsain. Again, you can say this letter is a consonant. Astara paratsaine. And paratsain, what are the consonants? Well, guys, everything else. That's nice. Okay. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, as always, drop a comment, and I'll be happy to get to them. See you in the next video.